All right. We are live and welcome everybody to Vibe Coding Tales from the people that are actually making this happen. Today, I'm going to kick us off with introductions. I'm Sean McLean. I'm a fractional CIO and the founder of Lohi Advisors. We are a fractional agency that helps a lot with this type of stuff, AI strategy, security, operations, and your overall technical journey into digital transformation. I'm going to kick it over to Tam first to introduce herself and then kick it over to Preston. And then we'll get right into the content today. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat and I will be monitoring it. Tam, go ahead.
Cool. Thanks for the intro, Sean. Hey, everyone. My name is Tam Nguyen, and I am the founder of Dawn Again AI, helping small businesses operationalize and automate their workflows with AI through no-code tools like Make.com, and also tools like Lovable, which we'll be demonstrating today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Preston to do his intro as well.
Hey, I'm Preston. I'm a CPA and a founder of Rocketbooks Dev. So I help accounting firms build automations with Make, innovating, Zapier, and then also do some consulting and training in terms of AI foundations and automations like that. So yeah, I'll kick it back over to Sean here.
All right. So, yeah, we're going to get right into a demo of the build process. And again, just a quick reminder, this will be recorded, but if you stick along with us till the end, we're going to have some offers around some free tools and deliverables that will really help you guide if you're getting into customization, workflow automation, and a lot of actual application building, which is what we're going to get into right now. So, Tam, take us away. Please showcase a little bit more of what you do to plan out your customization build, as well as some of the tools that you're going to be using.
Well, thanks, Sean. And for those of you who have missed, this is the second part of our vibe coding series. So in the first session, we did do a quick high-level introduction of what vibe coding is, what might be possible with it. And in this session, we're going to go a little bit deeper into how we plan around building apps with AI. And then in a little bit here, Preston is going to go more into the weeds with, well, how do we actually set up a backend, which is the data architecture, how data transitions and moves from one software to another. I'm primarily going to be focused more on the planning aspect. So I do have some resources that I'll be able to share with you after this webinar that I'm going to be sharing with you right now. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and can you guys let me know if you can see this deck?
Yep, we got it.
Awesome. So this is Vibe Coding Guide to Building a Visual App. This is a 7-step process that I'm currently following and may evolve over time, especially as technology changes. But a good analogy might be, if you're building your own house from the ground up, you're not going to hire a contractor to start building the different rooms out and putting up drywall and things like that. That can be a very costly mistake before you've got the layout and the floor plan of your house. And so the same concept applies with building apps with AI. Before you even go into the prompting window and start adding things in there and building the visual app, which is very fun to do, and trust me, I've been guilty of this as well. You got to do the boring stuff. You got to do the planning. So the first step is just a quick brain dump of what it is that you want this app to achieve. What are the goals? What are the what are the features required for a minimum viable product or an MVP? What does your V1 look like? You want to make sure that these things are as refined as possible and you have a very clear understanding of what you're trying to achieve to avoid scope creep, because that can happen very easily if you don't have these things planned in advance. So in this case, what I'm going to be showing you is an app that I've built, which is a visual sales dashboard. And the reason why this can be so helpful is that a lot of times, especially as your team grows, you have data silos. You have data that's living in your proposal software. You might have data living in your CRM, like HubSpot, and you only have a certain number of people who have access to those softwares. So other stakeholders who might not need daily access to those tools, you're not going to buy a license for, and they won't have access to the data. So you might have team members that are copying and pasting data from one solution to another. They might be, recreating spreadsheets. All of this is time that could be spent doing other things in the business. So that's so what I do in this first step is I've been using Google Gemini 2.5 Pro. You can use any AI model. Some are better than others, especially, use a smarter, more reasoning type models. And so this one, what I'll do is I'll just start with a brain dump. And I've been using voice dictation quite a bit because I can't type as quickly as I can speak. And that's actually been really helpful. I've been using a tool called Whisper Flow, and that's been golden for me. But I'll just do a brain dump. Here's what I want the app to look like. Here are the goals. Here are the features. And I ask it to create, and actually, before we get into that, let's go back to this deck real quickly. Before I get into that, actually, skip a really crucial step is once we have some of these main features, what 3 or 4 key elements must it shows, deals, amounts, statuses, what problem does it solve, data accessibility. The next piece is once you have kind of the main goal is mapping your data architecture. And what do I mean by that? How does data move from the different systems? Is everything living in your proposal software? Are you syncing it with your CRM solution currently? Are things living in a Google Sheets or spreadsheet? How does data move? And so this is an example of how the data architecture might look like. So you might have deal data living in your proposal software, status has changed with different deals, things sync with your CRM like HubSpot. From there, you can sync it with a database like Supabase, which Lovable or the AI application would have access to. And depending on the robustness of the APIs of your different proposal tools or CRM tools, you may be able to create an interface that writes back data and makes actual changes to the deals inside of these softwares. So having data architecture is really important. And then from there, that's where you want to create your PRD or your product requirements document. It is a detailed document that tells the AI exactly what you want to achieve. Again, key features we talked about, the data sources and how the data moves, and also who the users are, what they need to see from the application. So what that looks like in actuality is, let me just go ahead and go over to Lovable. So this is the sales pipeline dashboard prototype that I've built. The PRD is going to look something like this. So here's a prompt for Lovable. I had AI create a customized prompt specifically for this AI tool. So it tells it that it's an expert UI UX designer and full stack application developer. So it's giving it a role, it's giving it a task. Your task is to build a web application built based on the following PRD. And then here's the actual PRD, right? What's the objective? Create a real-time visual sales pipeline dashboard. Target users and roles. Managing partners need access to this. Service line managers, maybe biz dev representatives need access to this. And then core functionality and things like that. So the goal here isn't to have AI create this. It's not going to be perfect when it creates it the first time. The goal is to give it the full document so it understands overall what it needs to be doing. So here's what that looks like. I gave it the prompt, and then it took about 1 minute and 39 seconds to create this first iteration of the application. Now, keep in mind, this is just the front end, so it's not connected to any data just yet. It's just the visual appeal of it. When you give it the first prompt, it is helpful to also give it any design assets or like screenshots too. The reason this is purple and it looks a little bit more modern is because I screenshotted Pilot's website. So I just did a full page screenshot of Pilot's website. There's a Google Chrome extension if you do a lot of full page screenshots that can be helpful. So it's called Go Full Page. You just click on it, take a screenshot of the whole thing, and save it as a PDF, and then upload it back into Lovable. I'm going to pause real quickly here, just in case there are any questions. Sean, have you noticed anything coming through?
Nothing through yet. We do have, I think, a couple of people entering in still. But one question that I had that I think also is a little bit of this join between what you've already described from the technical aspect and the actual operational aspect that I love about this type of use case is maybe go into a little bit of like, why would an accounting firm in particular or an advisory consulting firm need a custom sales dashboard? And I think you had a really good example when we were talking about building this, that applies really well to that type of industry. So what would be the why operationally for something like this?
Oh, totally. So first being software licenses. Sometimes stakeholders need access to this data, but they don't need to be in the day-to-day operations. And so you can save 30 to 50 to $100 per person on access to tools that they're probably never going to go into anyway. So you're saving costs there. The other thing is you have control over how the dashboard looks. Because if you go into HubSpot, for example, you only have so much customization capabilities, and then you have to work with tools that they have pre-built inside of their application. And again, which leads to we now have to purchase more licenses to allow stakeholders to go in and actually do those reports. I think those are the two big things that I can think of. I've been I've worked for businesses where, this has been a huge problem. And so like biz dev teams would have to recreate data from these different tools inside of spreadsheets, recreate dashboards inside of spreadsheets just to share with stakeholders. And then you have versioning issues. Can you trust the data that's being produced? Because human error is being introduced as well.
Such great points. And the other aspect that is, I think, starting to happen with a lot of these larger organizations, aside from just the matriculation of less user licenses for the folks that are not really using the full license, is that if they are just needing to get their own data into the system, and they might be doing it through their executive administrator, or they're actually deferring it to an AI assistant now, you can do all of that through MCP as well. So you don't need the full license for that type of stuff to just kind of get the data in. So it's a great example of making more enterprise and higher level software platforms more usable and more adoption friendly when you can have this customization, not have to tie it straight to it. So I loved your examples there. I just wanted to amplify it. And I think we can keep rolling. No questions coming in yet from the community, but this is great so far. So let's keep going.
Yeah, awesome, Sean. Thank you for those questions. That's yeah, it really helps to clarify things and why we're even trying to build this app in the first place. So the why is definitely very important. The other thing that I would add there is that a lot of businesses have such rich data sets that aren't being utilized properly, I would say, or being used to view these analytics and do these analytics. And so you're moving from more of a reactive state to a proactive state. So when you have access to this data in a way that's visually appealing, easy to access, you can start to make better decisions with this data. I'm going to show you different views. So this is just the V1 that Lovable created from that very initial prompt. The goal is to go back and forth with AI to implement all the different feature sets that we have asked for that was missed in this first initial prompt. So you can see the PRD is actually pretty detailed. It has everything from here are the table columns that we want. We want client name, proposal title, deal amount, status of the deal, win probability, deal owner, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can see all that represented here on this table, the pipeline deals. We can go ahead and even sort and filter by the different types of deals as well. You can see some basic visualization happening here. You can also see that this is pretty imperfect. You've got one deals by lead source, and lead sources are things like referral, let me see if I can go over here, website, partner network, cold outreach, conference, referral, et cetera. Right here, we have 0, 1, and 2. It doesn't mean anything to us. It's not helpful. And so this is where a little bit of patience comes into play when you're working with tools like Lovable, because you will have to go back and forth inside of the prompting window and say, hey, this doesn't make sense. This is what I need to see. And so I actually created this app. I'm going to show you the final product here because I went back and forth, as you can see. Here's the data source I'd like to use. Here's the Google Sheets. And I actually had AI create this sample data for me as well, with 75 deals with different win and lost reasons, as well as date closed, date created, etc. I came back in here and said, here's the actual data source I want you to sync with. And so it's going to do that work. And then I go back and forth with it with creating different types of visuals. So right now, this one main visual shows a high-level overview of all the deals, but let's say we wanted more analytics. Let's say we wanted, this is the final product. So all that back and forth was done within an hour. So I created this whole thing in an hour with the help of AI. Very, very few things were done manually. So we've got that, again, high-level dashboard, fix the lead sources, and we're actually missing a few, so we probably have to go back and update that. Pipeline board, so you can create those Kanban-style views and even have interactivity. So again, this is just front end, but if you have the tools with the correct with the robust APIs, and you connected those properly on the back end, you can simply move a deal from draft to sent, and that's going to update the deal status inside of your actual softwares. Right now we're showing high level details, but I added a prompt in here. So if I clicked into the deal, it'll show details of that deal. And then we have things like performance by deal owner. We can see leaders, closers, high value, anyone who's not performing well, 6-month performance trends. And again, this is all prompted by AI. And then lastly, you have analytics. I think there's a lot of opportunity around understanding why a business wins the deals that they win versus why they lose. And a lot of this information typically lives inside of a record in like a HubSpot, and then it's never really looked at. But when you can visualize it like this, it becomes pretty powerful. So we've lost, like 20 deals. 5 were due to price, 5 were due to competitors. They didn't make a decision, and it was a scope fit. So then you can do additional research here and make sure that your service lines are up to snuff. I'm gonna again just take a quick breather here. So Sean, Preston, I don't know if you have any feedback. Would you do anything differently? What do you think about that?
Especially from a complete non-technical coder, and I think a lot of our audience is going to fall into that category. At what point do you have to care about that intake of data? Like you brought it into Lovable initially through a Google Sheet, and at what point should we care about making sure that there is a vector database, and like Lovable works very well with Supabase in the back end, and what does that leap look like from even a vibe coding perspective? Can Lovable set up the whole connection for us? Maybe go into a little bit of that detail so that the folks know what makes the most sense when you are connecting it to also backend data or loading data from different sources.
That's a really great question, and one that I've done quite a bit of research and trial and error with before. I've never actually connected a Google Sheet directly to Lovable, and I would say that there are major limitations in just adding the Google Sheet link here, because I'm not sure that I can trust that that's going to be syncing regularly. When you bring that data into Supabase, that not only that data is going to be secure, you can run complex queries or searches based off of that data, and you can do a whole lot more with it. For those who have never heard of Supabase before, if you were to boil it down into the simplest terms, it's really just a database that houses your data. It could do a whole lot more than that, but I'm going to show you a quick comparison here, and this is going to be something we'll share out at the end of this webinar as well. But as a V1, I think it's easier to connect a Google Sheet just for testing purposes. Let's just make sure that the data is displayed properly, that it looks good, and we're good to go. And then once the interface has kind of been locked in, then you start adding in the backend and the more complex integrations. So it's very easy to connect Google Sheets, as you can see in the app. I just dropped the Google Sheets link. For prototyping and simple read-only dashboards, this is going to be really big. If you're simply providing a link, it's not going to be able to make changes back to the Google Sheet and therefore to your other softwares and tools. Scalability is low. It can get really slow and clunky. And so when you have something like Supabase, it is a little bit more technical. However, with tools like Lovable, who has a direct integration with Supabase, it makes that integration like a 2-click setup. It's really not that difficult. Because it has direct access to Supabase, it can also even, the AI can read the data structure in there. It can create the tables for you. It can create data for you. And so AI makes it much easier to set that up. And once you're ready to actually hit publish and have this be a production ready app, that's fast, it's secure, it's interactive. You can even write back. We saw the drag and drop functionality. You're going to need something like Supabase in order to do that. And then of course, scalability is high. So I hope that answers your question, Sean.
Yeah, that was awesome. And I think we might be able to talk about this again in future sessions, but the other aspect here that a lot of businesses are always going to be concerned about is what's the level of security and encryption on these databases. And I think the answer is the sky's the limit, and it's on you to continue that journey. Like you mentioned here, it does require some database knowledge. It's also going to require some business and other compliance knowledge to get to an actual application that you do want to publish and use as a regular piece of your business. And so there's more that can be done and more that needs to be done, but at least from getting things started and getting that aspect into a working model, you can do all of this, as you said, in literally minutes and hours, which is really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many ways that you can go about building these applications, which is the exciting part. But it also can be overwhelming because there are so many ways that you can go about this.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this is helpful. We talked about the PRD. We talked about generating the first draft by just copying and pasting the PRD that AI generates for you into Lovable. We talked about connecting data and the different ways that you can connect data and the limitations that you'll have by choosing different data connections. And you might see this a little bit here when Preston does his segment here and setting up Supabase backend. But yeah, that's really the end of what I have here. It's really just having a little bit of patience and having some curiosity. Definitely leverage AI as a strategy partner and a thinking partner, and not just something that'll do things for you. I think that's been one of the biggest pivots for me, is using AI as a thinking partner. So if I have raw data dump, here's what I want. I'll typically ask it like, hey, do you see any gaps, any improvements that can be made? What's missing from this PRD? And then we do a lot of back and forth before I settle on a final PRD to feed into Lovable.
It's fantastic. It's a great breakdown, and I think everybody's going to be really interested in this deck to be able to, go through that process, especially for the non-technical coders in the audience. So, yeah, thanks so much, Tam. That was fantastic. So, Preston, you're up. That's a hard act to follow. Let's see what you can do.
So first of all, on the point about like Google Sheets versus Supabase, all of that was great, and I think the point about security, I mean, that's obviously a huge plus for Supabase there. I'll show in my live demo here the using Google Sheets to get live data and connecting it with a make automation to actually send data back to Google Sheets. So we'll see that. I won't go too much into the make automation, but I did want to at least say that you can go down that route, but like Sean and Tam were saying, obviously, if you use something like Google Sheets, it's going to be easier to set up from the get-go, but it's going to be less scalable and probably ultimately less secure if this is something that's going public or internal to a lot of different groups or team members.
Yeah.
So just a note there. So yeah, I'll jump in here. So let me share my screen, and hold on one second. Basically, what I'm going to share is uh, an app that is an invoice and AR hub, essentially. Hold on, it's making me give my password real quick to share.
Got to get set up. And that was also a great point that Preston made. Even if you're only targeting these for internal tools, they still need to be secure because they're still going to be connected to the internet. So don't just think because you're only using it in your organization that it doesn't have to have that extra rigor attached to it. So that's a really good one.
Yeah. Hold on one second here.
And again, you can get AI to help you with that as well, right? Once you set up Supabase, we talked about it being a database, but you can also just prompt your Lovable tool to create authentication for any users that need access to it by creating passwords, by enforcing, Google sign-ins or SSO type of things. So yeah, AI can help you with that as well.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of
Might
times it will
add.
give you that extra piece. Oh, let me.
Yeah, sorry. There we go.
You're bringing in your avatar.
Yeah. It didn't like that I had a. Hold on.
And one thing that Preston also mentioned while he's getting loaded up is make.com is part of this other level of the ecosystem that used to be more focused on only automation and now has a very, very much of an AI and agentic workflow application. Zapier and a lot of other platforms are following that same type of approach. And N8N is probably becoming the leader in that space. So at the end, we'll also make a little note about those types of pieces of the ecosystem. And in some cases, like what Tam was using, you don't actually need that because the API integration between the workflows can do enough for you within the coding tools. But with a lot of cases, it is very helpful to have that extra automation piece as the cog within the wheels. You back in
Yeah. All right.
action?
Let me. Yeah, I think so. Sorry
Cool.
about that. It was
No
making me
worries.
close out and reopen. Let me share my screen here. Okay. Tell me if you can see this.
Yep, we're good to go.
Okay, so this is the first thing I'll say is the walkthrough that Tam gave for the PRD. That is exactly what you should do, and my version is going to be like a light version of that. So you'll see here this prompt. Basically, this was something I worked through with AI to develop this prompt that's going to give me my first draft in Lovable, and I already did this just so we didn't have to wait on it to build it, but. I'll walk through the exact prompt here. And like I said before, this is an invoice and AR hub. So basically, the goal is to log in, create a new invoice, send that to a Google Sheet, and actually get back from this web app, get back a draft email with a link to the invoice. And so in my case, I'm just using Stripe as an example. But basically, I'll have a draft email that I could just copy and paste and then send out that invoice. And then I'm going to have a dashboard where I can see some metrics from my Google Sheet. And so if I flip to my Google Sheet here, I just basically threw in some fake data. And this isn't super important, but what I'm showing here is essentially just so you can see that, like, when we look at the dashboard, we're going to see, hopefully, if we can get it to work, we're going to see this data live, and it's going to even use the dates to show me like an aging schedule and everything. So right here, what we see, it's 23,350. So we'll keep that in mind in a second when we look at the dashboard. But what I want to go through here first is the prompt. And so the prompt here is basically kind of like Tam was saying, you want to give it like some context about what you're trying to build. And so I'm just saying, basically create exactly what I was just describing here. I need these 3 different features. I'll talk about email history in a second because it's probably not going to be working for this specific demo, but basically this is just a context of what exactly I want to build. And like I mentioned, I chatted with Claude in my case, but it could be any AI, just to kind of get an idea of how you should prompt this, how you should build a PRD and get your first draft. And obviously, the more back and forth you go through there, the better your first draft is going to be. And in my case, I just wanted something really simple, so I didn't want to give it too much information. But like for the walkthrough that Tam gave, you probably want to go through like more specifics and map out like what each page needs to do and what each data point is going to be presenting and things like that. So I really just let Lovable kind of figure out exactly what it should do. And I did that by giving it the context. And then essentially I just gave it the Google Sheet. So it could say, so I could see it and see the data in there. And this is like what Tam was saying before, it's not going to be able to present live data from this. It's just going to see a snapshot of it. And if I were just to give it this, it would not be dynamic. It would just be whatever's in that sheet at the time I gave it the link. But what you can do, and what I'm doing here is I'm giving it an endpoint for this Google Sheet, which is basically like a JSON endpoint. And the only thing you really need to know about that is it's essentially calling a Google Sheets API to grab the data from my Google Sheet. And I'm just telling it here in my prompt, I think it's down a little bit, but I'm just telling it to refresh every 60 seconds. So every 60 seconds, it's just going to go to this link and pull the most recent data from my Google Sheet. So that's one way that you can get live data. Now, to actually like send data back into Google Sheets, I would have to go through a process to either do that in the web app, or I'll show you in a second the way that I'm doing that in Make. But that is how you can get live data in. It's just one of actually a few different ways. You could use something like app script as well. You could go through a little more technical process as well to get some stuff in, but also AI can help you figure that out as well. And then,
and Preston, really quick on that note, I think you can use Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT to help build your JSON scripts and packages. And for those of you who have never even heard of that acronym before with JSON, you don't really need to know as long as you can get into any type of LLM, chat interface. You can start talking through this like what Preston and Tam are doing. So that's probably one of the scariest parts for non-coders that have never heard of JSON, and they see some sort of JSON request or output, and you're just like, oh, I'm stuck now. I don't know what to do. Go into your LLM and start asking those questions. It will help you get unstuck pretty quickly with basic language. And Preston, I think, has just showcased how quickly that can be done with this type of example. So that's another critical point, especially for the non-coders in the audience.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, full transparency here, I literally went to Claude and I was like, what's the easiest way for me to get my Google Sheet data into Lovable? And it was like, hey, try this. And this is what it gave me like 3 options, and this is what made the most sense for me, at least. But like I said, you could do several different methods to get this. So yeah, that's a great point. So yeah, if you don't even know what you want, that's not like the end of the road. You just say like, here's the result I want. How would I do that? And in most cases, AI will help you figure that out. So yeah, that is how I'm getting live data in here that I'll show in a second. I also gave it a screenshot. So if I scroll up here, this is basically just a screenshot of my Google Sheet, just so it could see what the data looked like. I don't know how important that is, but more info is better than less, I guess. And then basically here, what I'm saying is this is the pre-build review. So I'm telling Lovable, like, before you even go and build this, look at all this information, make sure that everything here is working properly before you try to get into the weeds. So that's the first piece I gave it. And then I get into my requirements, and I'm essentially just telling it the 3 different things I want. So I want it to be able to create an invoice, which I'll walk through these in just a second, but I want it to create an invoice, which is this first tab here. I want an email history page where I can see all of the previous requests I've made and draft emails that are logged in my Google Sheet. And then I want an actual dashboard that'll show me basically my accounts receivable info. And I even gave it like some KPIs that I want there that we'll look at in just a second. And then lastly, I just gave it a couple notes on like handling data. So I told it make sure that the dates are uh, like appropriately formatted and you're calculating everything correctly based on that when you're doing the AR aging stuff. Make sure that the currency values are formatted appropriately, and then basically just telling it like make sure you do error handling. And then lastly, the style. I mean, this is we can easily change this after the fact, but I'm just giving like basic style guides, which isn't super important here. And then yeah, it literally took 3 minutes 7 seconds, and it gave me this, which is a pretty good first draft. And this is where we'll go um, into the actual live build. But before we do that, I just want to touch on these three tabs and what we're looking at currently. So I haven't made any other updates other than that prompt just to get this first draft. So you can see here, we've got, this is the landing page, basically. We've got, this is the new invoice. So I can enter the information that it's showing here. I mean, it looks like I can click all these fields. I can even select the date. I didn't ask for that. It added it on its own. And then there's a button to actually create the invoice. And one of the things that I want to just hover back to real quick, and this is kind of outside the scope of the live build, but like I said, there's a make automation that I'll explain in just a second. But I gave it in make, I created a webhook and I gave it the webhook URL here. So I told it whenever I click this button, call this or send data to this webhook, and it's just going to send the data that we're seeing right here. And so what my make automation is doing on the back end is actually just taking this data, and then it's going to create an invoice in Stripe, and then it's going to send back through another webhook response, send back the information from my make automation. So all my automation does is it creates that invoice, pulls down the link for the actual Stripe invoice, and then sends me back like a draft email, which is just a template that I created, and we'll see it in a second. But it's just a template I created, and it's going to have the Stripe link in there as well. So that's literally all the make automation is doing. Um, if this is scary, and I mean, I'll stop there for a second, Sean or Tam, if you want to ask anything. If this is scary, all you really need to know is like make gives you this. So like if you just type in webhook and make, and you start your automation that way, it'll give you this URL, and I just pasted it here, and I just told Lovable, this is where I want to send the data.
Mm-hmm. And I think with most workflow automation platforms, which also includes AI agentic platforms now, that is going to be the critical language to start understanding what are the triggers, what do webhooks mean, and how can webhooks be used to go from platform to platform. And again, just like JSON packages and API integrations, this is how the interoperability is becoming much more not only easy to use, but also it can have this extra layer of security when you are using what is this new interoperability platform called MCP. That's the Model Context Protocol. You can actually have a little bit more security than just the basic API key, which is essentially the password that can be used to connect two different platforms securely. You still have your own MFA or end user security on top of that identity, but the big aspect is you want to have enterprise level security, especially if you're sending financial data, which in this use case, you would want to protect all parties that have invoice data or payment data going backwards and forwards. So that's a really great point that it's just part of the lexicon. It looks scary right off the bat. I don't know, Tam, if you've also seen any other, similar terminologies or, language items in this space that can look a little daunting, but then once you use it a couple of times, you're like, oh, I get it. That's just how we connected things together. Is there anything that kind of hit for you when you're looking through some of these things?
I mean, definitely those terms, but pretty much everything because I don't have a coding background, and that's okay. You can get AI to explain everything for you, screenshot things, ask it what a webhook is, ask it what it does, have it explain to you in simple terms. That's really how I've learned.
Yeah, super helpful. So yeah, thanks for that pause, Preston. Still um light on the questions from the audience, but we'll keep this rolling so that if anybody else has a similar question, they can enter it into the chat. So I'll be monitoring that. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So like I said, it's just sending the data to that webhook, that URL that I gave here, or hopefully, I actually haven't tested it. So hopefully it is. We'll check that in a minute. But what'll happen is make automation will run and then it'll send back data, hopefully. So we'll test that in 1 second. If I flip here to the email history tab, so it looks like it's actually pulling the data from my Google Sheet, which is good. It's likely not like active data. So meaning if I changed something here, nothing would happen. But all I wanted to do here, it looks like it didn't do everything I asked, but all I wanted to do here was basically if I had created an invoice previously and it gave me a draft email to copy and send off, then I wanted to be able to go back and see old ones in case I wanted to like, in case I accidentally exited out or I wanted to, create three and then go copy them and send them all together or something like that. So that's all this tab is. It doesn't actually show me my draft email, so that would be something that I would ask for it to fix. So that's one note here. And then my AR dashboard. So if I look at this, if you remember that number from the Google Sheet, this is the right number. So that's a good sign. It's actually connected to that Google Sheet data. Um, we'll have to see if it's actually live. I'm not 100% sure yet. It looks like there are potentially some issues here because the days outstanding are showing like invalids and errors. So it may not be correctly interpreting the date formatting from my Google Sheet, which is fine. We can try to get it to figure that out. So that would be another note. But at least as far as the totals go, that looks good, and it's actually showing like the specific invoices, which is good. So yeah, like I mentioned, I mean, this is the first thing it gave me after this. It shows pretty much all the formatting and everything. I think it looks pretty decent. Nothing special, but I guess let's see if just for our first test, let's see if anything actually works here. And then I'm going to actually show how to pull this into Cursor, and we can make some edits there. Let me do this one.
And this is going to be a great example for anybody that does feel that they hit a roadblock when they see those types of errors. Because Preston's going to talk about how it can be remedied and debugged potentially
Mhm.
in a more complex tool like Cursor. But I think Preston would also be good to know like what is that logic tree that you go through at first when you start to debug things.
Yeah.
Can it be done in Lovable? Or do you do have to kick it up a notch into a cursor or like a deeper coding tool to be able to make heads or tails of some of the problems that they're gonna appear, right? We're gonna have to fix
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Let's see if this will actually work. So, yeah, I think the way that I typically think, well, it looks like it actually kind of works. So we'll look at that in a second. But the way that I think about like debugging, so if it's something really, so first off, to answer the easiest question, yes, you could absolutely do this in Lovable. So really, then it becomes like, where do I want to debug this? So I had previously leaned towards moving it into Cursor for a couple of reasons. One, Cursor offers a little more optionality in terms of like the exact model. If I want to choose a specific model, like maybe one is better at certain things than another. But the other thing was the pricing. And Lovable previously was doing like you, I think that actually they still are, but you get a certain number of credits each month, and basically each time you ask it to make an update, that spends one of your credits. Cursor, I think actually like in the last couple of days just changed their pricing model, so maybe TBD on exactly how good it is now. But before, you could make a lot of updates in your standard $20 plan, which is the same price as what Lovable's first paid plan is. So I kind of defaulted to that because I was like, well, I don't want to burn through a ton of credits in Lovable and just waste my $20 when I could make 10x the number of updates in Cursor and not burn through all my credits. Which, maybe that, like, maybe other people don't care about that. Maybe you just want to stay on Lovable, and that's fine. I think it's great at making these updates, but in terms of like choosing which system, I think it just kind of like both of them can do pretty similar things. If we're talking to anyone who is like much more technical, then Cursor is probably the better choice there because you can actually see and edit your code, um, like you would in like VS Code, for example.
It's a great
One
point.
But
one thing that I would add to this as well, and I've learned after integrating Superbase, is that um, Lovable has a really great integration with Superbase, and it has direct access to the data that lives inside of that database. And so this is something that Cursor is missing. So
mhm.
if I ever need to touch that database, typically those changes are easier to do within Lovable because they can directly read that data and like write into that database. Whereas with Cursor, it'll tell you how you might be able to make changes to the database structure, but it won't actually do the work. So I don't know if things have changed. It's been a couple of weeks, so things move pretty quickly. So that's been my experience anyway.
Those are both great points.
Yeah.
And we do also have a question from the audience that came in while you were exhibiting this use case before you get a little bit deeper into it, Preston. So maybe we can address that right now. And it's kind of a general, success story for both of you. Beyond simple examples, have you both had what you would qualify as success deploying any of these things? And also, he's offering a couple examples like around real-time events or collaboration potentially with clients, that type of stuff. So, either of you guys have like maybe one of these examples has been something that's an actual true success story. But have you anything come top of mind for each of you? Maybe Preston, you can start.
Yeah, I mean, I have something that I use both for my business and for my personal life that I built in Lovable, and my go-to is really just like connecting it with Make or N8N for automations and doing things like these webhooks to do that like real-time data or like send it through. And I know you can build within the web app. You could build like access to ChatGPT and things like that. But to me, it just is easier because I'm familiar with Make and N8N to like build an automation that has access to AI agents or AI models and can complete things and send it back. So really, I just kind of use it as like the front end of the web app for like simple things. So like for example, one of the things I use it for, unrelated to my business, is like meal plan stuff. I built my own little meal plan thing for my daughter, and I mean I use it pretty often, so it works for me in that case. But yeah, that's just a dumb simple example.
That's a great one. Yeah. I mean, personal success stories are critical. How about you, Tam? Anything that pops as a success story with either a client or personal project?
Yeah, I would say internal apps. I've built some of those as well. I've been writing on Substack, and they have a pretty limited API, but things like building scripts that will allow you to queue up uh, what they call notes, kind of like a Twitter/X style feed, being able to schedule those in advance, queue those up, move um, like the scheduling dates and things like that. So I've built those. I have a couple projects in the works right now with some clients that I'm working with. But as far as SaaS related projects, those are going to be much more complex, much more long term. I don't have any of those that I published just yet. But yeah, I mean, you can go from zero to a prototype and even to a production ready application in a matter of days and weeks, depending on the complexity of the tool.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the important thing that I mean, you pointed this out before, Tam, too, but like if you're building like some actual software, like yeah, you can get started with something like Lovable and Cursor, but especially if you're not technical, like once you hit the point where you have an MVP, you probably want someone who understands code and security and all of that stuff to be able to come in and review, or you just make sure everything is buttoned up and things like that.
Yep. And there's lots of CTOs out there that will do that type of work on spec projects as well. So definitely a great way to network with folks like the three of us to help find those types of resources on a budget as well, because there's a lot of folks that are do that on a project level. All right, you want to get back into
Yeah.
the finished part of your testing, Preston?
Yeah, so I won't go into the make automation because it's a little beyond the scope of this at least, but it looks like it worked correctly. So basically, like I said, it sent data to the webhook and it sent it back. And what it sent back is this draft email and then an active link, which I'm assuming is going to be an invoice. It looks like it probably is a Stripe invoice. Yeah, so there's $100 that I submitted in there. So it looks like everything is working there, which is actually great. So what I'll just show here is how to get this into Cursor. And I'm just going to use Cursor for maybe like one or two updates to just show an example of how you would do it. But it looks like the main thing is already working. So if I go here to GitHub, first what I want to do is actually connect this to GitHub. And the reason why I want to do this is because once I get this project into GitHub, I can connect my cursor to GitHub and pull it down. So it's kind of GitHub is kind of the middleman here, and it's a great tool because it can just host your live code at all times. So whether you're syncing it from Lovable or Cursor, it's just going to have the live code there. So I'll just connect the project here, and then I'll click my account. If you haven't connected your GitHub account, it literally just makes you log in and accept some terms, but it's pretty simple. So now that should be connected to my GitHub. So if I click out of that, I'm going to go into Cursor. So here, this is just like the homepage of Cursor. So if I click on clone repo here, and then I just click clone from GitHub. Again, if you haven't connected GitHub, you'll just have to do the login, which is simple. But it should be this invoice hub flow. Actually, let me just make sure that's what it's called. Invoice hub flow. Yeah. So I'll just click that one. And then it'll just ask me to save it somewhere. So I just have a place for these on my computer. So I'll just click that, and then I'll just click open. And it's going to be all my code. So it's as simple as that. It's literally just a few steps. And now I'm in Cursor. So if I click here and I go to the pages, you'll just see the page. These are the pages that Lovable created. So it already kind of structured the code in a way that makes sense. And if you were in Cursor and you wanted to like edit code specifically, you could just click through, and you could, if you're technical, you could actually just go in here and change the code. If I wanted to change this link, I could just paste in a new one. But for the purposes of our example, all I'm going to say, for just to keep it simple here, basically, I just want to update the dashboard, and I just want to say the dates did not come through appropriately. So I'll say, let me actually go back and take a screenshot so that it can see. Get out of this. So if I just take a screenshot here, I'm just going to tell it that the dates did not come through, and we'll see if Cursor can fix it. So I'll just paste the screenshot here so you can see it added that image. So I'll just say the dates link. If I were doing this for real, I'd probably go to like ChatGPT or like not the agent mode in Cursor and try to get it to give me a better prompt so that it gets it right the first time. But just doing this live, I'm just going to give it something simple, and we'll see if it fixes it. It may not, but we'll at least be able to see how you can make edits in Cursor.
And that's the page.
Sorry, say that again, Sean.
patience aspect, right? Sometimes work initially doing part for a lot
Yeah.
of folks, right? It's like that patience can be tough to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna cut off there for a second, but yeah, definitely have to have patience. And yeah, like a lot of the times, even if I get a response from Cursor and it does something and it didn't work, I'll take that, copy that entire response from Cursor or wherever, Lovable even, and paste it into ChatGPT or Claude and be like, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. Here's what it said it did. Do you see anything wrong with it? So it's
Mhm.
almost like you're working with multiple different like AI models or AI yeah, like different AI models to kind of help you troubleshoot if it's not working well. So I'll just say, can you take a look at the image and help you figure out, uh, let's say, how to parse the dates so that the data comes. Okay, so this is what I'm going to say. I am not giving a very good prompt, so I may not get it right. But the other thing I wanted to say before I submit this. So when you're talking to Cursor here, so I had clicked into this AR dashboard page. And so you can see here, it's specifically referencing the AR dashboard, which is fine in this case because that's what I want to change. But just know that like if you want, Cursor can usually still figure it out. But like if you want to reference a specific page, you can click that page and just ask the question, and it'll reference that page in your note. Um, if you don't want to, if you just want to talk to your entire code base, you could just exit this out and like it'll just talk to the entire code base, which is usually fine. If you have a huge amount of code, then maybe that would be a little too much for it, but that's kind of how you do that. And you can also set this to auto, so it'll just choose which model you want to use. For this one, I'm going to leave it as Claude 4 Sonnet because that's pretty good at coding. But that's kind of like personal preference. So I'll just submit this, and it's going to do um, some thinking, and then it's going to probably do some edits in the actual code. So you can see here it's actually planning. So when you use something like Claude 4, because it's a reasoning model, it's actually thinking through the steps that it wants to make before it actually goes and changes the code. So you can see it thought for 15 seconds. Now it's actually reading the code base, and then it's going to go in and edit the code here in a second, hopefully.
Yeah, called out
So
specific
yeah,
problem. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So hopefully whatever it does here is actually going to fix it. Sometimes, like we were saying, sometimes it does recognize this, changes the code, and there's still an issue or another minor issue. And in that case, like you were saying, Sean, it's just patience and like talking through it with either Cursor or another AI model and just trying to figure out exactly what is still going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And a kind of a little tip, you can switch this to ask. So when you switch it to ask, this also is a feature in Lovable, by the way, but you can switch to ask and it's basically just like chatting to an AI model. So it doesn't actually edit any code. It just like answers your questions. And you can even ask it questions about your code base. Like you could say, what's my main brand color? And it'll return an answer there.
That's a great tip.
So it's actually working really hard on this.
Does it ever come back and suggest that you fix the source data rather than like go over a parsing code issue fix like it's doing right now?
Yes. So sometimes it will say like, hey, you should go into what Google Sheets and edit the, change how like the JSON's formatted or something like that. And if it does do that, you can just say like, no, I don't want to do that. Like you should just fix the code. That's one option, assuming that's a way you could actually solve the problem. But yeah, that's certainly one option. You can tell it like you don't want to do that, or you could even ask it, like you could switch to ask mode and say, how do I do that? That's another option as well.
Great.
Yeah, so it says that it's updated it. This took a lot longer than I thought it was going to, but it updated it. So it's telling me that that should be fixed, the aging bucket should be fixed, and the due date should be fixed. So now what I want to show, the last main thing, I guess, for Cursor, if you click this little button here, it's going to take you to your changes. So when you make updates, and this is connected to GitHub, if you remember, we connected that early on. When you make any updates like this, best practice is to just always stage the changes and commit them after each update. So if you wanted to change like 7 things, I would do one at a time and commit each of them 7 different times. And then you could go back and review your actual web app. But so in this case, I'll just click stage changes, and then I'm just going to say what I did. So I'm going to say updates. I'd probably be more specific if I cared a little bit more, but I'm just going to say updates to dashboard dates. And then I'm going to click commit, and then I'm going to click sync. And so when I click sync, this just sends that back to GitHub. And now GitHub is going to reflect my new code. And if I go back here in Lovable, because it's already connected to my GitHub, it's going to automatically see this here, updates to dashboard dates, the commit that I just made. And it's going to make, it's going to refresh and hopefully fix some of that stuff. So
that looks good.
It does look like it actually fixed the date issue. So now I have another issue, which is it's not showing any of my currencies in the buckets. So obviously my next step would be to troubleshoot exactly why some of it's still not coming through. But it did at least look like it fixed some of the date issues. This still says invalid. So there's obviously still stuff I need to go through. Like I mentioned, I didn't give a great prompt to Cursor. So I probably like needed to tell it 1 or 2 other things that it probably also needed to do. And because I didn't give it that info, it just changed what I told it to.
Mm-hmm.
So to wrap this up, like basically I would just go through this exact same process, and I would look at this and be like, looks like there's some problems. And I would either go to Cursor or go to ChatGPT or Claude and be like, hey, what's going wrong here? And my last little like hint that I'll give, or tip that I'll give, if you click to open in a new tab, you can also do, if you right click and you click inspect, you can also do this where you just open the console here. And this will actually show, like if I refresh, basically this just shows what it's trying to do when it pulls data. So I could just like copy all of this and give it to Cursor or give it to ChatGPT or Claude and be like, hey, I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z, and this is what the console says. And usually it can read all that and be like, oh yeah, it looks like, you see it saying here, literally could not parse date. So obviously there's still some date parsing issues. So yeah, to get here, you just go right click, inspect, and then click console. And that's like, that's like a semi-advanced way to like try to troubleshoot, but it might just be as simple as like looking and being like, here's what's happening, or sending a screenshot. I don't want to go too much more into the weeds because I know we're at the top of the hour here, but does that cover some of the main questions, you think?
Yeah, that was great. And we really do thank the folks that were commenting and questions. And as a reminder, you can, even on the recording, if you do drop a question in the event chat, or feel free to reach out to any of us on our socials, we can get into this more. But please follow us, especially on LinkedIn. We will have another session in the book soon, and we will be able to also give you some of those giveaways that we mentioned earlier, especially a little showcase of what's going on in this space, and especially what you can do to also plan out your first app if you haven't started building yet. So hopefully this has been a cool showcase for all of you to get that encouragement to start building, start creating, and take your idea and move into it more. And that will be one of our focus points in the next couple sessions as well, on top of more agentic level builds. So Preston, Tim, any final thoughts before we close off the stream?
Just remain diligent, remain patient with these kinds of tools. Iteration, shipping as quickly as possible is going to be key so that you can make those changes going forward. Don't shoot for perfection. It's never going to work out of the gate.
Great advice. Preston, anything final from you?
Yeah, I think that what Tam walked through at the beginning is super important. Like making sure that you understand exactly what you need to give to a lovable or a cursor when you prompt it is more important than like anyone else that's just talking to ChatGPT. Like, a lot of times we go to ChatGPT and ask it a basic question, and then we have a long conversation with it, when we clarify things along the way. But when you're trying to build something like this, you kind of need to do that on the front end. So what Tam walked through at the beginning is extremely important. And when you're troubleshooting as well, like my cursor prompt wasn't great, so it didn't solve all my problems. So if I went through the same process for that prompt, I would get a much better result.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the more that you do work with it, you're gonna get those tips and be able to keep learning and help your system learn because again, a lot of these have memory now. So that's part of the process of building.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. I think this was extremely helpful for the audience, especially, which is that extra little oomph to start doing it themselves. And we will have more coming. So please stay tuned. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you soon.